I'm sorry. I know I've laughed before when we start up, but it's like I don't get nervous when we do this, but it's like I was thinking of all these things for some reason more so than normal. And no, I'm not I'm not on anything.
As
But it's
everything
like
comes to
I want
your
to say
head.
this, I want to say this, I want to say this. It's like okay, well, I don't take notes. It just comes out like it comes out. Anyway, welcome everyone to Marketing Momentum with Charles and Deborah. Hi, Charles.
Hi, Deb. Hi, everybody.
Um, I'll blurt out the topic because it won't stay in other way. But okay, so this week we're going to talk about ethics. I think we've talked about ethics. If we haven't started a topic about ethics, we've ended up there on Marketing Momentum before. This one's actually about ethics. And I was thinking something different, Charles, on maybe Larry, know you know my story, and I probably told it on Marketing Momentum. I promise I'll keep it concise. So I'll probably have to think about how to keep it concise. Well, I turn it over to you, Charles. Do you want to give like um, an introduction or where you'd be coming from on the view of ethics in general? I mean, like for instance, I loved the college course I took in ethics. There we go. That's well,
Well,
that
yeah.
was not anything, by the way. That was my chair. That was not. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. When I did my MBA, one of the things that the professor at that time required us to do is required us to go and find an entrepreneur, in our, in our local area, and then interview that person and just kind of find out, what makes them tick, why were they successful, and absolutely horrible questions I was asking at that point in time, but um, the guy, he's very gracious, of course, as these guys who have really done this are. It's just so happened he knew my professor, so that kind of made it even better. So, um, so what he said, I didn't ask him about ethics. I asked him, what did he thought really contributed to, um, kind of how he was able to kind of do this year after year for 50, 60 years, and you know be progressively more successful. And he said that he said ever since he was kind of small, he would live by these rules, and he just didn't break them. And typically those rules were more conservative than most people would tend to live. And so he said, um, that a person, he believes, right, and this was just his personal opinion, a person has to have, you know this sort of code that they will not, under any circumstances, violate because of a specific reason. It can't just be because they have, it's my code, but it's kind of like, I just will not break these things. And I always think about that because I sort of think that, um, at some level, I mean, with everything kind of being, everybody kind of really drawing their lines and redrawing old lines that, traditionally have always been drawn by society and otherwise. I mean, I don't think anybody knows how to process all the information we're getting all at once. And so I think we're all trying to really, trying to figure out what all that means. And then the end result of that is, well, you really do have to have some rules, right? You really do have to have some guidelines. I was just talking about to Laurel, and I'll turn it back over to you for a second. And not there's anything wrong with it, per se, but the Wall Street Journal, I subscribe, I've got it online, the whole deal. Um, every day, um, I guess they're really pitching to their customer, and they've got, these Victoria's Secret models on the front cover,
I'm
right?
sorry.
I'm just thinking,
I
okay,
didn't see that one coming.
I'm thinking, all right, well, oil prices, I'm thinking, okay,
How did that
total,
end up on the
exactly, total disconnect. But okay, but I've got a couple of choices, right? Um, I could, I could really, just kind of dive deep. I could go, oh well, let's see what she's about. Or I can go and start checking out, well, what's her name, that whole thing. But then I've got to have, not just for the sake of my wife, but just as an entrepreneur. Um, I can't go down that road. I cannot and I will not. And again, it's not because I'm better than anybody. It's because those are my rules, and I've got to draw those rules based on this voluminous amount of information that we have coming in front of us, and because other people, obviously, the person put the ad together, they think it's fine, and the people who are probably looking at the ads, they probably think it's fine. So if I live by the fact that, well, these guys wouldn't do anything wrong, so it must be okay. Or the people that read the Wall Street Journal, well, they can't be doing anything wrong, so it must be okay. But if I live by those two standards, then I'm gonna go down the area where my conscience won't be able to kind of take me. So I have to draw the lines myself. So that sort of idea about rules, right, kind of defines what I view as ethics.
Boy, that would be a slippery slope if we started to say, well, okay, so this person, whatever level of respect, well, they wouldn't do anything wrong, so therefore that must be okay. And do, although that is kind of that, if you go back into, that stereotypical view of like, well, Jimmy said it was okay, and I'm not saying I didn't, hey, I ran through the sprinkler when I was like 5 or something. My parents said I couldn't do it, and my friend said, oh, how would they ever know? And she did it, so I did it, and well, your hair kind of gets wet, so I kind of got on that one. So it's like I never did anything. I'm not saying it was saint, but that
Right.
getting my hair wet and getting a little, what on the on
No,
the
yeah,
backside.
exactly.
I gotta learn. Um, Ethics. I think I probably shared this, so I will try to make it concise. But my background in the financial industry. I know Charles, you're probably like tired of hearing this by now, but or how you and you're right. I love how you said you have to define like or giving credit to the entrepreneur who said you have to have like your own code, your own rules, whatever your own. And I had before this incident, I always thought it was a person of integrity. But I never really sat down other than the college course. It was like, do you define that? What is, I mean, I think that was probably the defining moment where I had to draw the line in the sand because it really came down to, did I want to keep the 6-figure income that I was getting? Or did I want to say, I'm going to follow the law and do what the SEC wants? Because basically it was the West Coast Madoff. That's the easiest way for me to describe it. And if you search for that, you'll end up on my site. Anyway, and I chose to go with the government. Again, I'm not a saint. It's just for me personally, it had to be a moral code. And I think, it was difficult because I was used to getting my nails done. I was used to, going out for shrimp. I mean, we weren't living it up as much as you would on that income, but we weren't living it down either. We were, and my kids had, we had the pool house. They had friends over. We were taking their friends out for things. I mean, it was comfortable. You didn't, no worries about paying bills. But something my son said to me, because he had it was a fairly well-to-do area. So he had a lot of friends that were, their parents were wealthy. We were poor compared to the people around there. They're really wealthy. And he said something to me, all his friends are getting like, this is back a while, but like new iPods and, the iPad had just come out and they're all getting, and not just one, but they're getting like several different ones and different skins and, all this stuff. And we'd always been really, it's like, we didn't want everything to be about money. So you each have one little, poor kids have one little iPod and you got that for Christmas and you better not lose it because that's all you're going to get. We're not, the whole thing, whatever.
Right, because the green one was the one that was on sale.
Yeah, right? Exactly. But we didn't tell them that. But he said something to me. He said, all my friends are getting all these cool toys and some of them are getting cars and sports cars and all this stuff. He goes, you know what though, Mom? I would rather have absolutely nothing and live on the street and have a mom that's honest than all of the iPods in the world. And I mean, at that point for a kid, iPods was that really ranked that time. And that, I think that's what finally said, as hard as it was, it's not that it's hard between ethics and money, but you don't think that you have to necessarily, I mean, I don't know, when I was a kid, I thought, well, isn't everyone honest? Don't you go to work and you just do the right thing? And so everyone else does the right thing and then you get paid and then you work hard and isn't that the way the world, I mean, you watch Leave It to Beaver and, I can't remember I forgot what the dad's name was now, but right. That's how it works. It's supposed to work that way. But I think that validation is what, like you said, Charles, you have your own code. And that was my code, was I was going to be honest. I was going to side with the SEC, and not because I was afraid of going to jail. Although that's something my husband brought up later. He goes, if you had opted for the other one, they could have put you in jail. Oh, well, yeah, that wouldn't be good.
Yeah, but and see, these are all, you don't really, I think you don't really know, what an ethic is until you have to make a decision. Right. And so, because everything is kind of theoretical. And um, and I think about that a lot, especially in the age we live in, right? With social media being the way it is, and you've gotta brandish and polish your halo on social media and talk about, sort of who you, but that might be who you are. It might be. We don't know that. We don't really know that until you know what I mean. So it's not. It, I don't. My ethics do not may not reflect the memes I present. So in other words, I can send out a bunch of memes and say this is what an ethic is, this is what integrity is. But what'll matter is when I have to make a decision. And I thought about the fact that typically um, it is something that you don't have to do, that you end up doing because of whatever the code is, however you define it. You say, well, I could probably do this. And it's not that that you're talking about getting away with it. It's just you could make the decision not to live by that standard, right? I mean, I think about, we had I think about the time we left the boarding school, right? We could have stayed there, right? The school kind of came to us and they said, well, look, we need you to do the job differently. We need Laurel to be out there with the students more. At that point in time, um, my daughters were 13 and 11. They were right at that age where, I mean, hey, we could have left them unsupervised for 8 hours in the evening, prime time. We could have done that for the sake of the certainty of whatever the income would have been with the boarding school. We chose not to, right? And
Probably a
I
good
don't know.
choice. Speaking as
Well,
a parent looking back, even that age, even if they could, I think you made the right choice.
right, but see, we could have chosen to do otherwise, and it could have turned out okay. But it's kind of like, well, we had to really start thinking about, okay, well, who did we, what did we sign up for? We homeschool. We've done these things all for 13 years. And yeah, we could decide, okay, well, it's time for them to go to school. It's time for us to do things differently, get babysitters, get more people involved in their life, all the other stuff. But then we just said, well, is all that worth, making this decision to have this job? And it just ended up not being worth it. But it was a volunteer, it was a decision. So in other words, we always said that it was important, right, to have the girls and to be there and to have Laura with them. But all that was meaningless until we had to really make a decision, right? Everything we said up until that point was just, was just us again polishing our own halo. But until we had to really put some money where our mouth was, it was kind of theoretical.
That's a really good point, because I think I remember around the time taking civics, and I don't know if everyone in our era, and I don't know what they teach now, but I mean, I heard it actually. I was
No.
watching Blue Bloods, and it
Yes.
was I can't remember. Tom Selleck was saying something. Remember in civics we learned about the three branches. And I thought, wow, I mean, you guys had the same the same thing. I don't know if they still do that. It was like ninth grade civics, but somewhere around that time they also went through this whole thing about, okay, this is a law, this is moral, this is, and you know what? I have to look it up to find out the dictionary definition. But you were saying something, Charles, that really kind of brought it into focus as far as like in my case, I would have been breaking the law. And I didn't even really get to that point as far as do I want to break the law or don't I? Because it was so important for me to be ethical according to my integrity that, well, of course I don't want to break the law, but that really it wasn't a fear of jail. It was I need to be a person of integrity. But I think that's what can get us hung up, even on the flip side. And you mentioned something like, can someone get away with it? There might be someone out there who, when they look at something, this is technically breaking the law, but it's okay with my code. I'm not saying this, by the way, I'm just using an example. My code, because if I don't get caught, then I'm okay. And, on one hand, I want to say, I don't want to judge, because if that's someone's moral code, if you will, it's ironic. I'm actually writing about moral code in my dissertation. Okay, that's a whole, that wasn't why I picked this topic, but that's actually in the white collar crime one. But the, that could be that some of us would go, well, of course you don't want to break a law, but maybe for some people, that's okay with their code as long as they don't get caught.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I mean, it's every day. It's sort of like these every day, and I come back to using that word rules. It's like these rules that you set, right? You have to set them. It doesn't matter what anyone else says. I mean, whatever your religious code is, right? It's still the rules you set within that code. I mean, there are all kinds of things that you know um, people violate in their own religious principles. They violate in their own, let's say, business principle. But when I think when you start to say, okay, you know what, this is going to be the same about me regardless of whether it's today or whether it's 5 years from now, that if and again, see, the other thing is, most of this happens when nobody knows about it. Nobody's ever going to know, that you decide to do the right thing, because, and I think about that sometimes, these days, because again, it's the influence of um social media. And I think our society, we're sort of still addicted to celebrity. We sort of think that if we don't get credit for it, if somebody doesn't know I made the decision, I've got to let somebody know. And it's kind of like, well, no, you don't have to let
I
anybody
pass gas. No.
know. Yes, you don't have to let anybody know. You don't. I mean, okay, yes, you decided. I don't know. You don't ever put this in your email, but you don't have to tell everybody that, right? And so I think
So email blast to say I never put this in the email.
I never say this.
Sad thing is people do that.
I get tired of people who do that, but I never do it. But yeah, so I think that's what's different, sort of, about this age, right? I mean, there's always this specter, and I think um, um, that's what is partly confusing, I think, people about integrity, is because so much it's not what I say about myself, right? And typically whatever I do, it's typically going to be done, and it would never make it to a computer screen. It would never make it to um, um, an online medium, right? So do I raise? Okay, so here's a question, right? Do I raise my kids right? Do I raise my daughters right? Is it because I say it? Is because I tell you about all the things I do? Right? Is because I write them all on my Facebook page? Is because I put them all and take pictures of them and put them on Instagram? But that guy, boy, that's a guy that's really got integrity right there, because I see him, right? I see what he's doing. I mean, maybe, maybe,
I
right?
don't know
But
if
it
there's a
really does.
definition for
But
raising
yeah,
kids.
right. And I think that's what's kind of clouding the waters these days, right? Which is, just this whole idea that, I got to get credit for my integrity. I got to get credit for it. I got to tell people about it. I don't,
That's
and that could just be the way we are. I'm not comfortable with that part of it. But again, there are probably things that, you know, our generation did that, my parents, they're not comfortable with. So I get that, right? I get that. This is one direction where, I look at my kids, not saying that they do that. I'm saying, you're not supposed to hate on younger generations. I'm totally hating on them for that, right? I'm totally hating on that whole vibe. I'm just not, that part of it. I'm not with that.
That makes sense, because I'll catch myself saying something. It's like, wow, I can't judge. I thought like that one. 1:30. I was saying that I was talking to, well, she's a friend now, but she used to be a professor, and we were talking about psychology things and all this. It's like, I know. She says, I can't judge because I was like that when I was 19. It's like, okay, just zip it and we just make sure it turns out okay. And then, no, kids, I'm not talking about you, I don't think. Well, okay, we'll just leave it at that one. But, Charles, you inspire me, like a totally different direction on this one. But I was thinking about different scenarios. I'm just gonna tell this other quick story, hoping, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, that this shows another example. Like, for instance, the example you used with the Wall Street Journal. I don't think you're going to go to, and no, for your wife's sake, I'm not condoning it, but you're not going to go to jail if you look at someone. So that's like,
Right.
I keep saying code, but that's your own rules that you're following. So I mean, there's like I said, different definitions. But I had a situation. If somebody looks, they can probably figure out who I'm talking about. I'm really careful not name names. But I had a situation. We're on a Google platform. and I was tasked, and I probably told this story in Marketing Momentum. I was tasked with giving a report to Google. I'll put it that way. For any of you in SEO, you could probably reverse engineer what I'm sort of saying. But and I was always tasked with this, and that was fine. I was good at it and good at composing messages, whatever. But a certain person, again, not giving names, not trying to call him a liar, but he just kind of made up information, made up numbers. I think I've told you this one, Charles. Here, you know the backstory. Kind of gave them on a sticky note to one of my underlings, whatever. And I was like, where did this come from? And anyway, I found out it was just kind of like off the top, just off the cuff. It's like, okay, if you could do that, don't tell Deborah that you're just making up numbers. Actually, don't say anything. So I could, plausible deniability. So I think that those are actually valid numbers. So I had a really hard time with that. And I went right back to the SEC thing and the law thing. And I'm like, okay, I don't think, I love you, Google. Thank you for the Hangout platform. But I don't think that if you violate Google's terms of service that you're breaking a law and going to jail. So it's not hitting the whole law thing, but I'm like, oh no, we're going down this whole path again. And if I don't do this, I could get in trouble. And, it felt like deja vu, but it was like, but wait a minute, this. And that's where I was saying what you said, Charles, as far as this has to do with the rule thing. I can't do this rule wise. And that's where I came up with the idea. I went to another guy in another department, happened to be like the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So everyone's gone. I'm like one of the only people there, and this other department head. I said, you know what? This needs to be done. Here's what I've written. And I gave him the whole backstory. If you want to submit it, you do it, but I'm not having any part of it. And I thought, hey, okay, I found a way to sort of do my job. I wrote it up, but I didn't hit the submit button. Well, what's he do? He comes back and leaves it on my desk, says, there you go. You can, I'm like, I can't do this. This is being dishonest. So I spent another 3 hours rewording the thing to a point where I wasn't lying. Then I promptly contacted somebody who had a son who worked for Google and told them the whole thing on that one. Yes, I admit it. I'm not generally a narc, but I admit it.
Yeah, but again, you're you have to live with you, right? And so, at some point, right, having to live with, whatever you call them, regrets or your conscience, or having to live with that, right? There's, I think at this point, I it's hard to put things on my. I guess I want to be careful about what I put on my ledger right now. I want to be careful about that.
You mean like the halo, or you want to be careful with that?
Right. Yeah. Really, really careful about what I put on my, what I call my ledger, what I say, things that I have to live with. What do I have to live? What can I live with? I've got I've got enough going on, with my daughters and trying to manage, what I'm doing. I'm really trying to keep like things that would complicate complicate what I do away from me. And the more that you violate, I think, your own rules, you have to start thinking of complications. You got to start thinking of ways around stuff. And like you said, this guy created 3 hours of work for you, right? And so things just get so incredibly complicated in a world now where nobody has time for complications, right? Nobody has an extra 3 hours to burn. I don't have an extra 2 hours to do a workaround because you cut corners. I don't have that time anymore. Nobody has that kind of time. So now I just got to say, okay, you know what? Even if it means I'm not going to get as much money, I'm just not going to take this because it's just going to complicate things, right? It's going to cause me to violate some rules. I'm going to have to work around it in order to fit within those rules. It's not worth it.
And you know what? And I think from the history and the timeline, Charles, that basically within a month, I called it quits on that one, not because of that one incident, but I thought, when am I going to be faced with that? I did not lie to Google. Google, if you're looking at this, because it's your platform, and I'm sure you have better things to do, but I did not lie to you at all. But we did some stretching, kind of like dough stretching on that one. And I confessed, quote unquote, right after that one. But I didn't even feel good about that because you feel like you're kind of turning on the company. But
Hmm.
because of that, like what you said, Charles, a month later, I thought I need to part ways because obviously my rules don't fit in with the company's rules, and that's not a good fit.
Mm-mm.
I want the company to live happily ever after, but I also like, and I love how you put this, Charles, where you have to learn how, you have to be able to live with yourself.
Hmm.
And I'm glad that I didn't lie, but it's not like that's the proudest moment either. I just, all I can really say is I did the best I could under the circumstances, and then I parted ways.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
all. Wow, this one, in fact, this was better because the stuff that you were saying, I feel like you really defined. Well, you do this all the time, Charles. Marketing momentum. I mean, you completely define this in a way that made more sense than even what I envisioned. But I'd referenced something right before we start, and I realized after we've gone through this whole this whole marketing momentum that part of what was irritating. There's a couple different things that went on this week that don't need to go into the whole thing, but now I'm realizing that actually what was irritating was because they weren't following my sense of ethics and my rules. And even there's a certain person that keeps emailing me, even though I said, and I wrote, I've been called Dragon Lady when it comes to comes to my kids. And my husband just reminded me of that today. They go, you realize that they didn't mess with you with their daughter because you still had a reputation taking care of our son in the same school.
Yeah.
And I guess it was funny because it was my daughter's friend that came over and goes, you guys are so nice. I don't understand why the administration says don't mess with the Andersons. It's like you haven't seen my wife. You mess with the kids. And she's got another side. But anyway, so I wrote this email that was more along the lines Dragon Lady, and I stopped. I could hear my kids saying, Mom, you don't need to turn into Dragon
Mm.
Lady. And I put it in the draft. I just said, I'm not interested. And I was telling you, Charles, before we started, this guy who will remain nameless. He has texted me. He has emailed me. He's texted me the link for the Calendly or whatever. It said, I'm like, I don't understand. I said, I didn't send him the nasty one, but I said, I am not interested. I said to Mike, I said, I thought that I am not interested means, and he sent me this
Mhm.
email. Thanks for telling me that. But what do you think of my book? I thought that I am not interested meant don't talk to me.
Right. Right.
Am I
Right. Right.
just not
Right. Right.
being too
Yeah. No.
polite?
Right.
But I don't know if that comes under ethics. Now I'm just thinking that we can really easily, um, and just a quick one in comparison to that one, we had a Twitter chat, and I don't want to pick on my cohort there, but we're kind of getting into generational things there. But and maybe I mentioned this last marketing momentum, but in the Twitter chat, he was saying, this is offensive. This picture on LinkedIn, this, the whole thing, and I was saying, but and I won't say his name. You got to look at who's posting on LinkedIn. You got to look at who are our future breadwinners, who are our kids, our generation.
Hmm.
And if you see a gal in a bathing suit, maybe you're offended because you're used to wearing a three-piece suit. I'm not saying you're Charles. I'm saying this other
Right. Yeah.
guy. But the no offense, but I'm going to call you guys millennials that posted it weren't offended by the bikini, and you started it with the whole, like you're talking about on the ads. And who are we to go out and judge somebody else? And like you started this one, Charles, you're not looking at the ads. That's
Hmm.
your rule for yourself. But do we stand in judgment of people posting them because they have different rules?
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's where I think again. I mean, when it comes to information, we don't have those rules yet. And even then, even if we had them, um, the thing is it's always been free so that people could kind of do what they want to do anyway. So even if I'm offended and I say you can't do it because I'm offended, that's just, I mean, just, well, no, you can't do that because that makes me mad. Well, that, I mean, there's no way.
I'm hearing my kids and some of the stuff they say. Really? We want to see this? No.
I mean, it's just no way to enforce it. And again, I mean, trying to figure out the balance in where, we sort of need to live. Man, I'm not trying to add anything on to what I need to be concerned about. So I'm not going to battle with the Wall Street Journal. I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not going to war with them. I'm not going on social media to post, look at this ad. This is ridiculous. This is, it's not, even, let's say it is the end of Western civilization, right? Because they've got these models on here. I'm not gonna fight that battle. I've got other ones I gotta fight.
Exactly. I keep thinking my husband used to, and I've done it less. I think Charles, I think you'd back me in this one. I haven't gone all Aaron Brockovich in the last, at least in the last week. But anyway, no. Pick your battles. As far as if you're poisoning little children, yeah, okay, probably I'm gonna go call my congressman or something. But you're absolutely right as far as picking your battles. And that was, in fact, that's what I responded to my friend on the tweet where it was like, I think one of them, and I want to misquote him, and so I'm not actually saying his name, but it was like, what are we going to do about this to stop this on LinkedIn? And I said, I'm not going to do anything for two reasons. Exactly. I've got bigger fish to fry. And the other thing too is I might be a traditionalist. I might not post bikini babes. In fact, I'm 99.999% sure I'm not going to post bikini babes on LinkedIn. If I do, Charles, I'm sorry. It's at 0.001, whatever I didn't know about. But I do know this. I want to protect the rights of my children because that's important. I want rights. I want my children to have rights. They have a right to be whoever they are. And I'm not saying my kids are going to post bikini babes on LinkedIn. So he says, wow, you hit the mother. You really, but it's like, no, it's about being human. It's about people have rights and they actually have a right to self-expression. And you're absolutely right, Charles. We're in a whole nother, I mean, we're way past the information age. We're in a whole nother, I mean, people's thoughts, I don't know why I had to make the noise with the chair. I promise you that was the chair, not something else. But now I've got that in my head. Weirdly, I have to share that on video. And look at me. This is the loudest ever on Facebook. That's the world we live in.
It is.
Wow. Okay. And with that, you got to say something else. We cannot end this on thinking about passing gas. Yeah, that's all I can think of. So,
We'll just leave it with 3 periods and leave it open.
There we go. And no, I don't have to do that. Okay, you know what? I'm going to stop while I'm not ahead. That was my favorite thing my kids quoted back to me. Mom, you should just stop while you're not ahead.
I get told that too.
Yeah. Parented by your children. So anyway, to all you millennials, I appreciate you. And at least I, for one, protecting your rights to define your ethics however you like.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, Charles. Thanks all for tuning in. We'll see you same time, same place next week.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye, Deb.